two separate schools data report. So I know that when I looked at these numbers, some of these numbers seemed a little bit low to me. You know, in terms of, you know, I was, you know, certainly disappointed to see that, you know, we're, according to this, we are now under 40, you know, under 50% for English scores. Our math scores are down to 32%, and then our science scores are at 19%. So I decided to look a little bit more closely at the numbers. Scan up a little bit. This also shows, you know, basically those numbers, you know, our English, math, and science scores here for the current year versus what they were last year versus what they were 2 years ago. And, you know, again, especially English being our typical strength in our school, to see that drop down, you know, kind of surprised me. Also looking again at the math and seeing how far it dropped down, you know, surprised me even more. However, you know, still on this page, if we scan, keep going, one more, right here. The assessment proficiency levels. So they haven't broken up into the English scores, you know, what percentage of students got level 1, 2, 3, and 4 for both English, math, and science. And when I started looking at those numbers, that's when it started popping out to me. Because, you know, if I look at these 4 numbers, I can very quickly tell that these do not add up to 100%. They actually should have a 5th column. The 5th column are the students that did not take the test because of parent refusal. So, because when you add up these scores, 30, 61, this adds up right now to 80%. Okay? Which means 20% of the students at our middle school in grades 6, 7, and 8 did not take the test. And one of the changes that they started making, and I compared the numbers based from the data from the previous years, they are now counting those students as, in the statistics, as being not proficient. They're counting them as zeros. So when you look at the previous, you know, on the graph, when you see the data from the previous year and see English being at 51%, math being at 48%. That explains, you know, at least, you know, some of that drop, especially for the English. When I look at the actual data that we have, you know, looking at the, you know, our students, if we actually compared it to, you know, use the same formulas that we would have that they used last year, our English scores actually go up. Yeah, our English scores actually end at 54% instead of 51% from 2 years ago. Our math scores, instead of dropping down to 32%, dropped to 38%. So that started to explain some of the, explain some of the numbers that I was seeing. You know, and I will say that, you know, a few years ago, when they first started the Smarter Balance test, the first year of the test lined up with the first year of the school. And so we had the best practices conference, which is when all the charter schools get together for a day of workshops. And one of the workshops was with the Department of Ed's person that was in charge of the standardized testing, because at that time, they were rolling this out for every school in the state. And so there was confusion everywhere, so they figured that, okay, this is the perfect place. We've got a bunch of administrators and teachers all in one place, can answer questions. And I asked them in the session, I know, from teaching at our school for at that time, 6 months, that there is a larger population how will that affect our scores? And at that time, you know, he said it will not affect your scores negatively at all. We will put the scores as it is, and then we will have a participation percentage, and so, you know, it will be reflected there. And so, you know, it would just say that, okay, you know, 60% of your students took the test, and 40%, you know, either refused or had an official opt-out from the state. Obviously, that policy has now changed. And unfortunately, the way that they did this on here, it doesn't reflect that. They did not go back and adjust, you know, the previous years, because that would take obviously way too much time to do that for every school in the state, and do that, you know, for statewide. So, you know, we will be putting out, you know, the data for our school. You know, we will get it, you know, be able to get it out there. We can, you know, obviously find, you know, create those scores based off of the students that did participate in these tests. Okay, and so I do have those scores. So let's go to the middle school.
Before we go to pharmacy, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I actually have two quick questions. The first one, I hope is quick. Why is it that forgive my ignorance, why would a parent not want the child to take this assessment?
There are various reasons. I mean, I can say that I don't ask them, because, you know, they typically do not come to me anyway.
Okay.
You know, I just see a list, you know, in terms of when I'm proctoring a test, and I will see that a parent has, you know, chosen to, you know, has refused to have their student take the test.
Do you have a speculation that you'd like to share? Or?
No, you know, I think there are a couple of different reasons. You know, I can say, you know, and when we kind of go through this, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, I don't think it's because of specifically academic purposes and the fact that, you know, a student is not able to test well, or, you know, doesn't do well in subjects. You know, I think there's more of a philosophical opposition to it.
So final question, thank you for your patience. When I first joined the board, thousands of years ago, it seems that, it was at a spring meeting, and then the summer was off, and we had some test results that had come like that in the autumn, maybe not. At one point, there were test results that looked much like these. They seemed to show a lack of proficiency from our students. Dean Mooney offered me a very intelligent answer to this similar question. And she said that they just don't, we as an institution have elected not to teach the test effectively, right? We don't necessarily believe in these standardized tests, and as such, I'm not going to say we don't care about the results, but we don't value, we don't teach to succeed on these standardized tests. Is that still the case in your mind?
You know, I would say, you know, in my mind, it is true that we do not base our curriculum purely off of these tests, especially in terms of the fact that we do not look at this. You know, right now I'm going over the middle school portion of this, because that's, you know, now the SAS testing or the Smarter Balance testing. But because we are a middle and high school, we do not narrowly focus on those 3 years. This is really a 6-year process for us, going from where we receive a student as a 6th grader, which in many cases coming from the Manchester School District, which tends to have lower scores, much lower scores than the state average, to, you know, the end of their, you know, standardized testing career, which is 11th grade SATs in the spring. You know, and so that is kind of the process that we're trying to get to. Honestly, I think in many cases, that is the more important thing. Okay, is, you know, where are they at the end of 11th grade? Because then that goes into what's going to college. No one really cares what you know, coming down the road, no one's going to care what the student's 7th grade, you know, English score is, because once they get their 8th grade English score, you know, they can forget about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
The SAT scores, we are above the state average. In fact, the most recent, with our current 11th graders, they have been taking, they've taken 3 rounds of the PSATs. They took it in spring in 9th grade, spring in 10th grade, fall at the 11th grade. They are above the state average, which is almost always above the national. You know, New Hampshire is a high achieving state, which does value education. And so, you know, both in math and we are above the state averages. With the 10th grade, it is the same. They last took their PSATs in spring of 9th grade, and they were well above the state average for the English and pretty sizably above the state average for math. All right, so, but one of the things that we do find very useful, or at least I do since I'm a numbers nerd, when I pay attention to these standardized tests, I think it's a mistake that a lot of people make is that they look at, you know, okay, we're going to look at this year's 7th grade compared to last year's 7th grade compared to the 7th grade 2 years ago. Those are different kids. It's tough to try and base, you know, whether there's any growth or whether there's any actual education going on if you compare the 3 different groups like that. It is much better to track, you know, one group of students from 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and then eventually, you know, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So the charts, you know, if you saw my presentation last year on the SAT and PSATs, I did that with the high school standardized testing that we do. I've now been able to put this information into charts like that for the middle school. So we've got it divided by the cohorts. So here's the class of 2025. Those are our current 6th graders. Obviously, right now, I've just got it set up because I'm actually ahead of the game for 1 time. And so I've got it all set up. These students will be taking their first test with us in March. So I've already got the graph set up. Yep. So here is the class of 2024. These are our current 7th graders. They were our 6th graders last year. So we can compare. Here's our scores. This is the percentage of students that are deemed proficient. They are at level 3 or 4 on the 4-level scale that they have. For the founders, we have 52% of our students proficient in English versus 28% for the Manchester School District versus 55% for the state average. With the number of students that we have, 1 or 2 students makes a big difference. So when we compare, especially to, say, the state average, the fact that it's only 3 points away, 3 percentage points, that could be, you know, 2 students getting 1 question. Like, you know, 1 more question right now, that would flip up at that point. In terms of math, we got 30% proficient. Manchester was at 40%, the state's at 46%. Again, when I look at this, I look at, you know, especially with our 6th graders, that this is kind of, you know, this is the baseline. this is what we are getting, you know, we are inheriting these students from other districts. We do not have any control over what they are taught in first grade through fifth grade. And they're being taught many different things because they are coming from many different districts. So what we want to do is we want to be able to look at these, you know, it'll be more important to see these numbers when we get to seventh grade, when we get to eighth grade, and see if the numbers are staying consistent, or especially if there's growth. Or if there is a decline, you know, that can't be explained, then we need to figure out what's going on, okay, and be able to fix things. One of the things that I'm very happy with grade 6, last year, we had 90% participation. That is something that we have been seeing, or that I have been seeing over the 4 years that we've been taking these tests, is that our overall participation numbers have been going up. Not quite as fast as I would like to see, but the overall amount has been going up. Go to class of 2023. Okay, so these were the 7th graders last year. They are current 8th graders. So we've got our founder score here, 62%. Okay, so it does show that we went up. The Manchester scores stayed about the same. Okay, and the state score went up a little bit. But now, you know, we are now, you know, statistically, you know, slightly above the state score, but really about where the state average is. For the math, okay, our scores went up, okay, compared to Manchester, which went down slightly, okay, and the state went up a little bit, okay, but you can see that our 7th graders are above, you know, pretty sizably above the state average for proficiency. Our participation rate stayed about constant. Okay, we were at 79% 2 years ago. Last year they were at 76%. And you know, again, the higher that is to 100% puts us at a more accurate number. But you know, at least that is kind of a consistent amount, so that we can see what is going on.
So these numbers are, of course, not, we're doing the numbers properly without penalizing the numbers being set because students did participate. Has anybody asked, I'm just interested, has anybody asked them why they began that practice and if they're going to continue it? Because it's very.
I can say, you know, looking about 45 minutes before this meeting, I went on something else on the DOE's website, and they do have wording in there that from now on, because the law requires schools to, or districts to aim for 95% participation, they will penalize any schools that, yes. It is very marked in there that any, that students that are not taking the test, that do not have, you know, very specific exemptions, you know, especially medical related, then they are going to be listed, especially for the, you know, purposes of figuring out like average scores, they will be marked as zeros. So that is something that is in the law. All right, then we get to the class of 2022. This was last year's 8th grade. So a number of these students are with us in 9th grade. However, a number, you know, a good amount of these students did not continue on with our school. They didn't go to other high schools. One of the things that you can see, you know, going from 7th grade to 8th grade, okay, 45%. Okay, obviously these are not the scores that we want to see. Especially, you know, yeah, it's better than Manchester, but compared to the state, it's, you know, not strong at all. For the math, same thing. I mean, we went from 43 to 46 down to 24. And so what I want to do is then take a look at, okay, why is that happening? And see if I can see something in our, in the reports that I have to find out, is there a cause beyond, specifically what is going on in the curriculum and what's going on in the classroom. And what I noticed, this final chart, is with the 8th grade, when they were 6th graders, we had 84% participation. By 8th grade, it's down to 56%. And so I took a look at those students that had parent refusal. The vast majority of the students, I looked specifically at the math scores because those were the numbers that kind of stuck out to me the most, because those are, I would say, very disappointing. And it's easy for us to kind of look because we tend to level a lot with math. We have, out of the 8th graders, we had students in level 1 math, level 2 math, level 3 math, and algebra. The vast majority of the students that did not take the test last year for 8th grade were either in the level 3 class, which is our 8th grade level class, or in algebra. In fact, out of 18 students in 8th grade that took an algebra course last year, 9 of them refused to take the test. The result of that is our high numbers tend to get dragged down. And I think in many cases, looking at those students, many of those students are also strong in English because they are strong students. However, for whatever reason, they took the test in 6th grade. By the time they got to 8th grade, they did not take the test again. Their parents, did a parent refusal, and so it ended up dragging our scores down. One of the things, so the lesson that I kind of learned on that, and I cannot say that, that would bring the math and the English scores, assuming past the state average, because there's no way for us to be able to tell because they didn't take the test. However, it would not have hurt our scores if they were to take our test, just to take the test. We would definitely see improvement in both English and math, in my opinion. And so I think the lesson is that we need to encourage the students to take these tests, not necessarily because it's going to affect their specific grade. It's not going to affect what classes we place them in, but in terms of what we can look at in terms of our school, how we compare to the Manchester School District, how we compare to other schools, other districts, and to the rest of the state, it makes a big difference. And especially when we only have, in this case, we have 75 students, but 33 of them didn't take the test. Other schools that have a lot more students can, withstand 33 students not taking it. For us, that could be a big swing. That could be a big 20-point swing. So I think that is kind of the lesson that, going forward, that while it is great that overall our numbers are going up in terms of participation, we still need more. We need to make sure that we encourage students and families to allow their students to take these tests so that we can get an accurate gauge of what we are doing right, what we are doing wrong, and then get them into get them used to doing these standardized tests so that when we get to that, as they get closer to that end, like the SATs and then the SATs, they're comfortable doing it.
But, just to be clear, because this is something that I'm certainly gonna voice on, if that penalization was not happening within the numbers, what you're saying wouldn't be so, negative, correct? Let's face it, we either have parental choice or we don't. If a parent chooses to not have their child participate in testing, the parents make our schools. They have the right to do that. What should not be happening is that the overriding authority should not be able to come in and tank the numbers, stressing the school to promote the parents to take the test that they don't want their students to take. That's backward.
In a way, yes, but I mean, it is not just tanking the numbers. I mean, yes, the numbers for the current year are not strong, and they're exacerbated by the fact that, you know, of the change in policy. But if you look at this grade, seeing what they did in 7th grade when they went, you know, from 84% participation down to 60%. If you have it where all of your honor students are not taking tests, because those are the parents that are, you know, in many cases, those are parents that tend to be involved more, that pay attention and will actually take time to send an email or fill out a form for them to opt out, you know, or do a parent refusal, then that is going to skew our numbers. And if our numbers are then going to be publicized and made important, then, you know, we're going to be negatively affected. I mean, so it would be fine if, you know, the parent refusals were very much across the ability levels, evenly distributed, but not.
Questions?
So just to be clear, what you're saying is that, we're not just talking, the opt-outs, but you're saying that because the opt-outs are more proficient in these areas, that our numbers are skewed much lower. And would you say that, can you give me a percentage of the numbers that are opting out that you would say are highly proficient in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, again, with the 71% of the students that opted out for the 8th grade were either at level or above level in terms of our classes. And again, 50% of our students that would have been considered advanced in algebra class, they opted out. Participation for the SATs, we had 100% participation last year. For the PSATs, we had it out of, let's see. For this past fall, for the 9th grade, out of the 39 students that we had, 27 took the SATs. And so I do not have the percentage, I just wrote down the numbers. For the 11th grade, out of 30 students, we have an 11th grade, 26 students. So once they get up to the PSAT, once they get it closer to their SATs, parents tend to refuse a lot less because they know, oh, well, colleges take a look at SATs. Again, no one looks at the individual quality. At least in our school, no one really pays attention to the individual students' smarter balance or SAS test.
So from a parent standpoint, when it's a meaningful test that could be important for their kid, they get their kid to take the test, and our scores seem to work out just fine.
Every parent knows what the SATs are because many of them took it. You know, even these fun analogies.
I do want to echo Mrs. Cormier's remarks. I think it's an awful approach to the policy on a state level, not on a school level, to say that parents have a choice, but that choice is going to somehow reflect badly on the school's data when you make that choice. If it is a choice, it should be a free choice for the parents to make, and not something that affects the schools. I also think that it's a really poor way to present any kind of data. You're supposed to be filtering out the confounding variables, not mashing them back in there. You're supposed to do what you can to figure out what's the true measure of the kid's performance, not how do we mash it all together in a way that muddies it all up.
And so I think that, from the state policy, it's really an unfair and ridiculous thing to do. Nonetheless, I know we don't have any control over this, so probably preaching to the choir.
Thank you again for taking my question. So, based on the data that you presented with us tonight, would it be a safe, assessment that if we just based our data on the PSATs, we would see dramatic increases and dramatic proficiencies in both math and English?
Yes.
Compared to, the local school district and the state?
Yes, I mean, that tends to be what we are seeing. I mean, you know, we haven't been taking the PSATs and the SATs as long, because we haven't had high schoolers for the entire time. But yes, you know, we are seeing, that, you know, in regards to when you look at, especially say the 8th graders or the, you know, the standardized tests, you know, whatever it is, of the current year, you know, we do tend to lag behind, you know, even the state numbers. Once we get to the SATs and the SATs, you know, we start moving, you know, very quickly ahead of them to the point where, you know, there are sometimes when we are 70 points ahead of the state averages for, just one of the categories, whether it's, English or math.
Can I ask you a question?
Any other questions?
I had a comment.
Please, Barbara.
My only comment was because this data from the state is so skewed to make, school look, that it's not proficient in these areas, but yet our PSATs are showing that we actually are. Is there any way we can emphasize that, somewhere on our website and everything to publish, to say, this is why these numbers are skewed, but, you know, when we really get into the area of the testing that really matters most to students, when it's gonna be applicable to their entire life, we accept.
I like your idea, Barbara, and I think some parts of it are sort of the challenges of being a young school, but as we continue off into the future, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and you've got kids that have graduated from here and gone on to college, and you can look at college acceptance rates and the larger cohort of SATs and PSATs, you can start to really get into, you'll even start to have a collection of the accomplishments of college graduates who went to high school here, and you'll be able to really sing our praises a lot better. It is a little tough when you've only got 5 years of existence and these relatively poor measures. Mr. McKenzie, do you track the cohorts with the SATs and the PSATs the